Media moves really fast these days. If you don't take the time to stop and look around,
you could miss it.
That's why it's important for us to take a look at what happened only 2 weeks ago so that we don't forget that the attempt on Donald Trump's life left us with a bunch of different questions. And I'll just go out on a limb and say that the Secret Service director testifying at a hearing this week will not do much to clear any of that up. So today on the show, we're going to look at some of the questions that we have about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump and what spiritual lesson we can draw from it all. We'll talk about that and more today on Indie Thinker. Welcome to the show. My name is Reed Uberman. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Today's show is sponsored by our friends over at Salo Ridge. If you're looking for a great vacation spot, you need to check them out at SaloRidgeTreeSort.com. That's SaloRidgeTreeSort.com, and let them know that Indie Thinker sent you. Now, in what can only be considered a case of forgetting who butters your bread, John Deere recently announced last week that they would be ending all their funding for gay pride parades. In their words, they're ending social or cultural awareness. Did you know that the celebration of gay sex actually creates cultural awareness? I didn't know that. Maybe you knew that, but I didn't know that. And you get that kind of information on Indie Thinker. We love dropping truth bombs. So if you didn't know that, gay sex, cultural awareness. But that's not all that John Deere said. They also said after conservative backlash that they would stop diversity and inclusion methods in their hiring and training. Now, they also said that on one side of their mouth, while on the other side of their mouth insisting that they have never had diversity quotas and they don't teach their employees about pronoun usage or any such thing. Now, the first thing I want to point out is, once again, the success of boycotts. That Christians always talk about how we're supposed to impact the world and make a difference in society. And I know, generally speaking, and most importantly, we think about doing that in terms of someone's eternal salvation or talking to them about God.
Hey, Scotty. Jesus, man.
Or changing them from somebody who is agnostic or atheist and helping them see the truth behind the Christian faith. And obviously, that's the ultimate goal here. But I also think that we need to be honest about making the city our parish, as John Wesley said, and making a difference in the city, just generally speaking, making it a better place to live, making our world a more respectable place, a place that deserves, maybe the blessing of God, because we're conducting ourselves in a way that doesn't expose children to open nudity in the public streets just because it happens to be June. So if we're going to be serious about doing that, we may have to take boycotts seriously. And boycotts are an effective way for Christians to impact culture. I'll say it this way. Christians need to put their values where their wallets are, and they need to invest in things that create a better world for us. And so boycotts are one thing and boycotts are another, and we should engage in both of them. Now with Bud Light and with Target, we've seen how effective we can be at actually making this world a better place through those kind of means. Now, the other thing I would say is that this story shows once again the evil of DEI. There is conservative backlash, rightfully so, about DEI because there are few innocent ideas out there. I've said it on the show time and time again that ideas have consequences, and DEI is one that has devastating consequences, so we should be fighting against it. And now what comes to mind are famous plagiarists like Harvard President Claudine Gay and the insufferable and cringe-inducing Kamala Harris.
We got to take this stuff seriously as you are, because you have been forced to have to take it seriously.
We all know that DEI is a recipe for failure. Taking into account someone's skin color perpetuates racism and makes everything worse. Just ask the folks reviewing Disney's Acolyte right now. They can tell you how great DEI actually is. Just like the left, DEI destroys everything it touches. And this was on full display when the Secret Service's DEI hire Kim Cheatle utterly failed in her duties as the DEI hire for the Biden administration to protect Donald Trump from a would-be assassin who critically injured two and ended the life of another. I bring this up because a lot is going to be said, and a lot has already been insinuated about the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, leaving you kind of almost wondering, what do you think about all this stuff? But I think a simple answer is actually best here. As always, or usually I'll say, sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer. And today I want to offer two competing views as to what took place the day Donald Trump was shot. What happened in order to create this fiasco? How did this catastrophic failure take place? I'll show you Matt Walsh's explanation, and then I'll show you Dan Crenshaw. You can compare and contrast those two views, but ultimately, you'll have to think about it for yourself. And I think, as I'll share at the end of today's show, I think the simplest explanation is actually the most profound and the best explanation for what took place. Let's jump into it.
72 hours after an assassin shot and nearly killed Donald Trump in Pennsylvania, here is the official story so far. A random 20-year-old acting completely alone walked within 150 yards of a presidential campaign rally with a rifle, climbed onto a rooftop in full view of Secret Service snipers, set up his shot, and fired without anyone intervening and with no help from anyone. This 20-year-old is also so politically radical as to an attempted assassination, and yet not radical enough to have ever posted any political writings or commentary on any social media site ever in his life. He also wrote no manifesto, left behind no indication about why he did it. Even after authorities gained access to his phone, they say they still have no clue about his motivations. All we're told is that for some reason, he obviously wanted Donald Trump dead. There's just a handful of videos of the shooter circulating, including one in which he makes some weird sexual joke, and one in which he appears briefly in a Black Rock video featuring his high school classroom. Other than that, it's as if he never existed. As far as we can tell, this man's last and only political act before attempting to kill the Republican candidate was to register as a Republican, reportedly. Nevertheless, you must believe the official narrative and ask no questions about it, or else you are a conspiracy theorist. And one thing we know about assassination attempts is that there's never any conspiring involved. There's never been a conspiracy behind an assassination attempt, right? So we wouldn't want to engage in that. As unbelievable and insulting as this is the version of events that you're being told to accept. But with every hour that goes by, it somehow makes even less sense than it did before. Every new detail is more baffling than the last. Last night, for instance, CBS News reported that several Beaver County police snipers were stationed inside the building that the shooter eventually climbed on top of. They were supposedly looking for threats in the crowd at the rally, but there were no officers or snipers on the roof for reasons that remain unexplained, even though that would be the rational spot to place those snipers rather on top of the building rather than inside of it. But it's now an uncontested fact that the shooter used the police staging area as a vantage point to shoot Donald Trump. Nevertheless, roughly a half hour before the shooting started, these snipers positioned inside the building saw the 20-year-old shooter without his rifle looking up at the roof, observing the building before he disappeared, and then came back and sat down. So, and by the way, and one thing you'll see as we go through this story is that this guy was not, by all appearances, some sort of evil super genius, okay? He went through this thing very slowly and clumsily, just walking around like he's 30 minutes ahead of time staring at the spot where he wants to perch himself to shoot the presidential candidate, just in full view of the police officers. In fact, his actions were so suspicious that one of the snipers inside the building took a photo of the gun. Additionally, according to a separate local news station, quote, a law enforcement officer had also previously seen Crooks on the ground and called him in as a suspicious person with a picture before 5:45 p.m. Officers supposedly looked around, couldn't immediately find him, and that was it for then at that moment. So just to review, this man was on the radar of the security forces at the rally 30 minutes before he fired the first shot. And he fired it on top of the very same building where the police were staged. At a minimum, they had reason to think that Trump was in imminent danger. They had very good reason to think that. But they essentially did nothing in response. They let Trump take a bullet to the head before they addressed the threat in any way. Now, according to the Biden administration, we should not be outraged or concerned about any of this.
Now, Matt does a great job of retelling what happened there that day, and he seems to be, as he's giving us this narrative, kind of leaning towards one explanation, and he seems to insinuate this. In fairness, he doesn't say it, but he seems to be insinuating. And if I were to say what Matt thinks, again, YouTube, not me, but what Matt thinks, is that the Secret Service did this on purpose. They exposed Donald Trump to this bullet because they don't care if he gets shot. So that seems to be what Matt is saying. And there's really, in my mind, only two other explanations. If he didn't if they didn't do this on purpose, then maybe, as Mayorkas said, the Secret Service did their job. Everything was perfect and everything went according to plan. So you can hear that yourself.
Does the president have confidence in the Secret Service director after Saturday's failures?
I have 100% confidence in the director of the United States Secret Service. I have 100% confidence in the United States Secret Service. And what you saw on stage on Saturday with respect to individuals putting their own lives at risk for the protection of another is exactly what the American public should see every single day.
So you see, from the same guy that brought you the border catastrophe, we have the Secret Service did everything that they should have done. I'm proud of them, and they should be applauded. They shouldn't be scrutinized right now after letting a former president and future president get shot in the head. So that's totally an untenable position, obviously. The Secret Service did not do their job. Now, the third thing is what I think we get from Dan Crenshaw. So here's what Dan had to say.
Okay, wanted to do this video because you've all seen plenty of interpretations of what happened to President Trump in the assassination attempt. A lot of newfound security experts giving you a lot of information, a lot of which is false. Even some former snipers I've seen really making assumptions that need to be questioned. As you know, I look for facts. I've spoken with law enforcement. I've spoken with Secret Service, gotten a better understanding of what actually happened. And I want to give you some facts and context that I think will help you understand how something like this could happen, something like this security failure. Now, no excuses being made here. This is a security failure. Anytime a president gets shot, it is a security failure. But then we have to assess whose fault it was. Was it incompetence or was it some purposeful conspiracy? Was it just bad luck? Hell, was it a mix of all of it? First, let's start with that building. Everybody wants to know why that building wasn't secure. We had some news hosts yesterday even claiming even they would know to secure the building, right? They didn't do any actual digging. They didn't actually ask any questions. Of course, the building was designated to be secure. The question is who was in charge of securing it. Huge failure by not securing that building, even though it was secured. Turns out there were police in it and they did confront the shooter, but they failed to do so. And then the big question is, why on earth did they not get on the radio and get Trump off the stage? They're all on the same frequency. They can all talk to each other. Secret Service did not get word from that local law enforcement unit that they had a problem. And if there's going to be an investigation into something, I think that's what it would be. Now, there's another conspiracy going around that the counter snipers purposefully didn't take the shot. They saw the guy and they purposely didn't take the shot. That kind of thinking is coming from from the internet, a bunch of range rats who, go to the range and shoot their rifles and take pictures, but never actually have done any real training on target acquisition or threat identification, none of that. So let me just paint this picture for you. You're a counter sniper at a Trump rally. There's people everywhere. It's loud. Supporters are very excited. They will climb on top of whatever they can climb on top of to get to see Trump, right? This might be the one time they get to see them. So the counter sniper team knows two things. One, they know that building has been secured by a local SWAT team. So they're expecting cops to be over there and perhaps being on the roof because that building is designated as an overwatch position. So that's what the counter sniper knows. The other thing is, do you think that the Secret Service should just shoot people at a Trump rally or any rally for that matter? Would that make any sense? No. You're going to be pretty damn sure before you just shoot an American civilian at a political rally. Let's take another thing into account. That building is like any roof, has a slope. The shooter was crawling on the opposite side. So if the counter sniper even saw him right away, that's when the gears start turning. Okay, the sun is shining from the side. It's not to the sniper's back, so you're not getting a perfect view of this person. It's unclear. We don't know whether the rifle was covered up or not. And again, that could easily be a SWAT officer because those are the guys who were supposed to be at that building in the first place. And then you have to decide, do you just shoot a civilian? What if it's just somebody with a telescope who's trying to get a good look at Trump?
Now, Dan doesn't go as far as I would like to here in just a moment. He said this was a security failure. Well, how do you say understatement of the year? Now, to see how much of a, quote, security failure this was, let's rehash just some of the details that we didn't get from Matt and that we didn't get from Dan here. And I think that this will be helpful to us. So 3 hours prior to the shooting, the gunman was walking around the area where the rally would take place, and he had a rangefinder in hand. And then he was lost by the authorities. So he was identified with that rangefinder, and then the authorities just lost track of him. Then just recently it was revealed that the shooter actually scouted the location with a drone that was found in his car. But the official report is that we don't know if he scouted this weeks before the event, somehow he just had this intel that Trump was going to be there, or if he did it on the day in question. And the fact that they are leaving this up to some scrutiny means that he did it on the day in question, by the way. Now, on the day when he shot Donald Trump, he showed up yet again to scout the location where he would eventually shoot Donald Trump. And as you heard from Dan, that building was supposed to be secured by the police, but because the roof was sloped, they didn't secure the roof of the building, they secured the inside of the building. So local police screwed that one up. And then the shooter would eventually scale that building that he was scouting, and then he would sit on that sloped roof where he would get off a shot and almost kill Donald Trump. Once the shooter secured access to the building, we are being told now that there was about a 20-minute window where this guy was seen on top of the building, and Secret Service knew about it, and still they didn't open fire. And it was only after the shooter opened fire that finally the Secret Service acted and finally ended that threat. So yes, when we hear security failure, we're talking about a security failure of epic proportions, not only from the local police, but also from the Secret Service. So to just say that we don't need to rush to judgment and we need some real caution, we need to kind of put nuance to this, right? My least favorite word. We need some nuance about this shooting, and we don't need to rush to judgment. I think that seems dishonest because I think we certainly know enough, at least at this point in time, not to make full conclusions about everything, but to at least draw some conclusions. Now, I get it. Conspiracy theorists are famous for drawing conclusions based upon a lack of evidence rather than having all of the evidence here. And there's still a lot of evidence that needs to be found. But I do believe that I can rush to judgment at least in this way. If given the two choices between a fatal conspiracy where there's an MK Ultra-like training that took place and this assassin was trained by BlackRock and others to become a future Trump annihilator, and that's what happened here. There's a deep state conspiracy to end Donald Trump and it just went afoul. Or the second option, a complete lack of competence made this shooting possible. I'm going with the second. And honestly, I don't see why someone like Matt Walsh wouldn't easily concede that. After all, he's been one of the most vocal opponents of DEI for years, and his main argument, as it has been and should have been, is that if you hire based upon diversity, you're not hiring based upon skill, and then that creates a less capable workforce. So it creates maybe, let's just say, an Atlanta judge that's more interested in wilding out on the weekend and going to the club with her friends and then assaulting police officers rather than acting like a respectable adult. I know, oddly specific, right? But DEI does that kind of stuff. It puts people in positions that they don't deserve. What we saw with the attempt on Donald Trump's life is just the tip of the iceberg. If DEI is allowed to continue to roam free on our society, in the future, you can expect planes to drop out of the freaking sky. And the only consolation that you'll get for your disintegrated home is the honor of knowing that those flames were caused by a black lesbian quadriplegic. Congratulations. But this isn't just the repercussion of DEI. The reason I can readily blame incompetence rather than conspiracy is because I know something as a Christian that I don't think most people like to admit, and that is this. We are deeply and utterly depraved, fallen people. In other words, I believe fail army and stupid criminal videos exist because people, in a word, are very, very dumb. 3 words, on purpose, by the way. The reason we do not like that answer is because I think we don't like to acknowledge the scary proposition that human beings are deeply flawed, and they are the ones running the institutions that we blindly put our faith in. Our lack of soul searching on this and many other issues is traceable, in my mind, to the evil of secularism. When you don't believe in or have been conditioned to think like a person that doesn't believe in God, the only source of faith that you can trust in is humanity. In my mind, this is one of the primary causes for the rise in conspiracy theories outside of mistrust in our lying media. This is the reason conspiracy theories have been prominent in the present. When you don't have a belief in God who orchestrates the events of your life, you're left asking, well, who does orchestrate the events of my life? When you don't posit a divine mind, all you have is human minds. Because in my mind, atheism is a deeply prideful kind of course of action, you're going to have to posit a human mind that's calculated and devious and super smart, just like you, right? Playing 4D chess and employing a level of sophistication that elevates mankind to the highest of heights. Please allow me to illustrate. The modern left was way more willing to give up their bodily autonomy during COVID to the, quote, experts, as they arbitrarily told you to wear masks and then distance 6 feet apart because magic exists. This is seen not only in COVID, but also in climate activism. It's also seen in the fact that the Democrats put their trust in a decrepit old man that is clearly dead simply because they don't want to think about their own mortality. They don't want to think about the fact that humans are deeply flawed. Because if they do that, they'll engage in a level of soul searching that is dangerous. In fact, if you're not careful, it'll turn you into a conservative. And then, if you go really deep, you might even become a Christian. Object to that all you want, but just try it sometime. Engage in this thought experiment about our institutions and the fact that humans run them all. Think about this sobering thought when you're on the interstate sometime, that you are surrounded by people who may not be that bright. It's kind of unsettling if you take the time to really think about the fact that so much of your life has been delicately created by fragile systems created by people. The refusal to accept the plain, scary facts of life are deeply progressive, because the progressives typically lean less religious and then don't posit divine minds. But let's be fair, it's deeply human too. We all generally prefer the illusion of safety so that we don't have to think hard thoughts about how we're actually living our life. Most people walk around with a level of plausible deniability about their own mortality because the unexamined life is hard to live and the Netflix life is way easier. And if at this point you would ask me, Reed, are you really saying that all atheists or anyone that isn't a Christian is walking around ignorant of the world around them and they exhibit an extreme amount of blind faith that would make most Christians blush because they trust the dumbest social institutions imaginable while also mocking Christians for what they believe? And to that I'd say, well, yeah, actually, that's kind of a really beautiful way of put it. I don't think I could have put it better myself. If you finally get honest enough to glance beyond the veil of our presumed safety and you look at who's really pulling the strings, like we did when we saw Donald Trump shot, we see that life really looks like basically a bunch of lesbians working for the Secret Service trying to holster their guns. Now, I'm just kidding, of course, kind of. But we are fallen people, and deeply so. And safety is an illusion. And no one is guaranteed their next breath. And if you dared to peek behind that curtain like Dorothy, you might be horrified at what you see. All that to say, I think we look for conspiracy theories because in the absence of a divine mind, we can't bear the thought of being subject to the whims of human minds. We need to believe that there is some devious master plan because we really don't want to admit that without God, life would be a bunch of random, meaningless, unpurposed events, coordinated on accident by bumbling buffoons. But that is all that life is without God. But I do have an easy solution for that apocalyptic thought. Don't put your faith in incompetent human institutions. Believe in something bigger. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check our sponsors down below. And most importantly, go with God.